How's it going, guys? Alpha here, bringing you my NPL Season 2 recap. As you may have known, Sunday I uploaded my first round playoff battle against Aki and his Portland Crowbats, and we did lose a narrow 1-0 game, which means our season has come to an end, but that is not a sad or depressing thing by any means, because this was a huge season for me as a coach and as a battler. If you've been around long enough to know what happened in NPL Season 1, I was 2-8 in that season, and I had a negative 18 differential. So, yikes. That's pretty nasty. That's a bad record. That is actually a 200 winning percentage. This season, however, I was 8-4 with a +8 differential, which is a 667 winning percentage, and a improvement of +26 in differential, which is huge. Honestly, in a much more competitive and intense league too, and even a much more competitive and intense division. Yeah, so we're gonna kind of talk about the team, what I did well, what I did wrong, things of that nature. Even talk a little bit about each match individually and how things went in those matches, if I could recall them correctly. But I think for the most part I will. So yeah, we're gonna start off with the roster. This is easily in my opinion, a much better team than the one I drafted in Season 1, but that's because I did have the second pick in the draft, and I also elected to franchise him on. So I franchised Manaphy and had Megalopony before anybody else except for Nerdy had drafted, so had a bit of an advantage, I think, coming into this draft, but still. So yeah, the roster, as you may have known if you've seen my battles, was Megalopony, Manaphy, Reuniclus, Crocodile, Darmanitan, Snorlax, Weezing, Togetic, Raichu, Haxorus, and Crustle. Obviously, some mons appeared more often than others. Clearly, my core, as you can see on the screen, was Manaphy, Lop, Reuniclus, and Togetic, actually, mainly. Nobody else, with the exception of Weezing, came to more than half the games. Weezing popped up in 8 because it was a good physical wall for my team. I didn't have many of those. I really wish I would use Snorlax more. That's the first thing that comes to mind. It's a really, really, really good mon that I was afraid of a huge fighting weakness week in and week out, so I usually left it on the bench because I also had Crocodile and Lop, which were both nice to have. So that would have been nice if I would have put Snorlax to more use, because it's a really viable Pokemon that I just kind of left out way too often, I feel like. But in terms of things I did right this season, I mean, Megalop and Reuniclus both finished with 14 kills, which is tied for, I believe, 3rd in the league in the leaderboard. I mean, it's tied with like 6 other mons, I think. But still, to have 2 mons in technically the top 3, I think that's pretty good. Manaphy, once again, didn't do great with it. Racked up 8 kills this season. I believe that's more than I had in Season 1 with it. But had some decent weeks with it, had some not so decent weeks with it. I feel like it did what it was supposed to do in the playoff game. Just didn't plan on getting paralyzed with it, that's all. Yeah, so I think I used Lop and Reuniclus to their full potential, definitely, especially Reuniclus. Lop, I really just kind of padded its stats towards the end of the season, but Reuniclus was a solid mon for me the entire season, and when it did die, it only really died to really shitty situations. It died to crits during Calm Mind stacking, it died to flinch hacks, it died to para-flinch hacks, it died to para-flinch crit hacks, it never died in just straight up normal ways, with the exception of like one death, I think, when I played Turbo. Crook, I liked how I was able to use Crook this season, mainly as I used it a little bit more defensively than I would have liked, I think, but it did win me that one game in week 3, I believe, against Rez, when I was able to push out 2 of its 3 kills in the season against his Thundurus and his what do you call that thing, Pangoro. But so I feel like I did a relatively good job in dealing with using Crook this season. Darmanitan, actually, for the amount of games it showed up to, it actually put in a lot of work this season. Definitely had a good week with it in week 8 when I played Grim and his Luxrays. Picked up, I think, 4 kills in that game. Maybe it was 3, I don't remember. Also had a pretty good game with it against... it did most of its job against Eric as well. And what was the other one? I believe it was there was another game where it had a pretty big impact on the game as well. But it was a good Pokemon to have as like a major problem for people to prep for, because he just hits so goddamn hard. I really wish I would have brought it in my game against Aki in the playoffs, but I didn't. It really could have helped deal with some things like freaking Tangrowth, for example. I didn't do that though, so that's on me. But yeah. Snorlax, like we've already talked about Snorlax. I wish I would have brought it more. I didn't, but it did its job when it had to. It showed up and made a huge impact on a lot of games. Weezing. Weezing was a huge contributor this season, and oddly enough, it was like my primary defensive wall on this team. Obviously, taking hits from Mega Metacham the 2 times I had to play Ben was huge. Being able to take hits from things like Thunder, like a nasty plotting Thundy Eye, was huge. Being able to... what else did it do? In the playoffs, it burned Mega Aggron with a Fire Blast. That was kind of badass. It did a lot of things. It allowed me to switch. It was one of the few things on my team that was allowed to switch in on pretty much any physical hit, barring like a Zen Headbutt from a Mega Metacham. So it was pretty nice to have that. Togetic, another really staple of my team, but I don't say that in a good way, because it would have been nice to not have to rely on Togetic so heavily. In next season, I definitely plan on drafting a more viable hazard removal, a more viable way of hazard removal, whether it be a spinner or just a more viable defogger. But nonetheless, it did take hits when it had to, and that's a really huge thing, because I didn't have much of that on my team. Bulky Manaphy, Reuniclus, Crocodile, Snorlax, Weezing, and Togetic were pretty much the only things on my team that were taking hits, because I had a pretty frail team. Oh, I shouldn't say frail, but not as bulky as I would like for future reference, I believe. Nonetheless, Togetic did do its job when it had to. It pulled off a couple of nifty plays this season, I would say, so I can't really complain. It did pass that nasty plot into Reuniclus in Week 9 for Reuniclus's biggest sweep of the season, so that was pretty cool. Raichu, other than the dreadful Week 7 where it didn't break Mega Gardevoir's sub, it did its part when it showed up. It hit that Blastoise in Week 3 really, really hard with a Specs Thunderbolt, which is cool. What other game did I bring it with? Or bring it in? I don't remember which other game I brought it with. Honestly, off the top of my head, I can't think of it. But still, it did all right. Maybe it was against Rez. That sounds right. Haxorus. Haxorus was actually a huge part of this team. Even though it only showed up 5 games, it was... victorious in 4 of the 5 games it showed up to. It finished with 4 kills on the season in 5 games, which isn't bad. A lot of the time it never hit the field when I did bring it, unfortunately, but when it did hit the field, it played a huge part in the games usually, so that was pretty cool. Definitely a mon that I wish I would have used more often, but I had a bit of a problem with a fairy weakness on this team as well. When you have Lop, you have Crook, you have Haxorus, you have... I thought I had another fairy weakness, but maybe I don't. It was one of those things where it's like I couldn't bring too many of one weakness to any one battle, and I would have liked to bring a Dragon Dance variant a little more. I didn't get that chance to really, but it would have been cool, but I didn't. So next up we have Crustle. Crustle was the... I believe the mon I brought least. No, Snorlax was the mon I brought least. Crustle was the mon I brought second least, tied with Raichu. But I did bring it a lot early season. I hazard stacked Ben Week 1 only to remove them all with Togetic because I'm a dumbass. I was able to use it to feign my hazard stacking set and knock out Rez's Mamoswine in Week 3, which was really cool. It was actually the only kill Crustle got all season. And I believe the other week that I brought it was against... What other week did I bring it? Maybe it was against Kentucky, I feel like, or maybe also could have been against Nerdy, I don't know. But I did bring it 3 weeks, and it won all 3 games, actually. It was the only mon on my team that won every game it came to, even though if it was only 3 games. But it was a really, really good Pokemon to have for options for hazards, because it gets both Spikes and Rocks, and it also gets access to Sturdy, and my favorite set on the entire world was Sturdy and Dur, with a Custom Berry and also Spikes and Rocks, and then like some other damaging move. It was really cool, fun mon to work with, just because it was a very interesting mon to use, because it can be a threatening offensive mon if you get a Shell Smash up, but it's mostly used in a defensive utility role to stack hazards. That didn't really work with my team because my only hazard removal was Togetic, and I don't like hazards on my side, so I usually had to get rid of hazards on my opponent's side as well, which sucks. Yeah, so that's the squad. If we just look at the season really quick, we started off with our 1-0 victory against Ben in Week 1, which we should have lost because he did miss a high jump kick that basically killed his Mega Metacham, which would have cleaned up my team. But he missed, so we're not going to talk about that. I played that game relatively well. Kind of played pansy ass around the Shuckle, but hey, I got around it. Week 2, we lost 4-0 to Eric, and that game gives me nightmares because Reuniclus got flinch hexed in that game, and I was sad. Borussia in week 3, we claimed a 1-0 victory thanks to Weezing's clutch clear Smog, and that was my favorite play of the entire season, I think. It was so fantastic. Week 4, we beat Turbo 3-0. Got a couple of clutch paralyses with Snorlax, which was pretty cool. Got a couple of huge plays off with Reuniclus, and I believe also, was it something else came up pretty big in that game. I don't remember what. My Scarf Manaphy set, I'm pretty sure, came in clutch that week. I could be wrong, but it was a cool set. Week 3, we beat Mamo 2-0, and that was the big game where Reuniclus was able to knock out Mega Sceptile on a roll with HP Ice, I'm pretty sure. That was a huge match. Week 6, we got Nate and his Larvitars, where we won 2-0, and Haxorus was able to pick up 2 of his 4 kills in the season, critting Milotic to end the game, which didn't really matter all that much, but still it mattered for differential. We got blown out in week 7, and that was my worst game of the season easily. That one I just did not prep well for, I'll be honest. Lugia's team was just not going to be beat by the team that I brought, and it showed. If I had gotten ballsy and tailglowed on the Endure that Lugia ran with his with his Salakberry Toxicroak, it would have been a different story, but that was a crazy play at the time. There was no way in hell I was making that play. Week 8 against Kentucky, I tackled Talonflame, which is a big deal for me. So, Darmanitan came in clutch with a huge finish in that battle. I think he got 3 kills or 4 kills, something like that. It was something crazy. Week 9, we got our 5-0 against Nerdy, where Reuniclus got his mini Trick Room sweep, which was awesome. Week 10, we lost 2-0 to Rez. Once again, got bodied by a Scarf Lottie. No shock there. Manaphy put in a decent work, though, so that was pretty cool. Week 11 against Reno, against Eric. I was so sad to get flinched out with that game. Reuniclus was going to put in the finest work. I had everything set up with my Cosmic Power Lop set, and then I got flinched out, and I was sad. My Valley Drum Snorlax didn't work because he got the Endeavor off on it, and it brought it down to like 20%, and I was sad. That was just a sad game where things had potential to go well, and they just didn't. I sacked Darmanitan way too early in that game. I don't want to talk about that one. And then week 12, we got our beautiful 6 kills with Mega Lop, which was awesome. But yeah, that was the season. Things that I want to improve on. I definitely want to work on. I still play a little bit short-sighted a lot of the time, and it's things that I realize in my post-coms that I don't think about when I'm playing, and that's definitely something I want to work on. I also want to work on building a team that's drafting a team that's a little bit more balanced. This team is very, very hyper-offensive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do consider myself more of a hyper-offensive player, but it's definitely, I need to have some walls to build around, because having Snorlax, Weezing, and Togetic as my only real technical walls is kind of a problem. I mean, Reuniclus also fills that role, but I prefer to use it offensively. And it's just something I need to work on, is building a team that can work against multiple kinds of teams. My team tended to struggle against teams like Eric's team that was built to wall a lot of different Pokemon. It struggled against Rez's team to a degree because I didn't have a lot of Pokemon that were fast and still had the eligibility of being Scarfed. To beat things like Scarf Latios, to beat things like Scarf Mamoswine, Life Orb Mamoswine, things like that I couldn't. That Manaphy was my only check to both of those Pokemon, really. Reuniclus to a degree, depending on, or at least for Latios, it was kind of tough to work with. I also definitely want to work on, just in general, my playing. My prep I feel like my prep has gotten better, but I still make amateur mistakes with my plays. The prime example of that would probably be in week 11 against Eric. It wasn't even like, yeah, the flinching and stuff sucked, but something as simple as clicking U-turn with my Darmanitan on his switch into Hydreigon that he was sacking to bring in Dugtrio. If I would have just clicked U-turn in that game, I probably win that game 3-0. And instead I lose 1-0 because I don't have anything to deal with that Dugtrio anymore, and it's just a nasty scenario to be in. Not even that I didn't have anything to deal with the Dugtrio anymore, but just the fact that I didn't have Darmanitan around anymore, so I had to use some of my checks to Dugtrio to deal with the Mega Venusaur. It was just not a good scenario to be in. I got hasty and I jumped onto the chance to Flare Blitz Jirachi, and it just bodied me because of that. So things like that, things where I just jump the gun and don't think about my plays, is something I had to work on. Things that I was really, really happy to see this season. Obviously a winning record. Obviously a playoff seed. Obviously contending my division until the last couple of weeks of the season where I took a couple of bad losses. Not even bad losses, just losses that affected my chances of winning the playoffs. But I mean, I went into the ninth or into the 10th week of the season with only 2 losses on my record to that point. So like that's a pretty good scenario to be in. I feel like I've grown leaps and bounds. And even my playoff performance, I lost, yes, but it was lost against a very, very, very good battler in a very close match, and I was proud of it. I didn't lose that battle and feel dejected. I felt good about myself because I battled really well and I played really well. I just didn't have the means to beat my Lord and Savior Tangrowth. But looking forward to next season, I'm definitely have a lot of things to think about with franchising and things. I don't know if I'm going to franchise this season. I did have a lot of Pokemon I like to use. Obviously, I'm pretty sure I can't franchise Lop or Manaphy because I franchised Manaphy this season, and Lop's a Mega Evolution, so I'm pretty sure I can't franchise either of them. Plus, Sun and Moon's coming out, so I don't even know what's going to be franchised or what's going to be working with that meta. Reuniclus obviously had a huge impact on my team. That's always going to be up there for a chance. If I were going to probably franchise any Pokemon on my team, it would probably honestly be either Reuniclus, Snorlax, or Weezing. All 3 of those Pokemon were just so good when I did use them. Darmanitan was also nice because it hits so goddamn hard, but I don't think I would waste a franchise on that Pokemon. It's good to have a hard-hitting fire type, but I don't think I would in this scenario. Crook was good for certain roles, but I don't know. It just seems like a hard Pokemon to waste a franchise on. If anything, it'd be, like I said, Reuniclus, Snorlax, or Weezing, I think. I'm definitely looking forward to the chance to draft a new team. Not that I didn't like this team. I loved this team, but it's just there are some things that I did notice glaring weaknesses on this team. One, my only check to taking a fighting type move on this entire team, my only checks were Reuniclus and Reuniclus and Weezing. And, well, Togetic, but Togetic's so goddamn passive that it hurt to try to use that thing to take fighting hits. I definitely want to work on drafting a team that has better hazard removal because having just Togetic was a huge problem for me. I couldn't deal with that every week. Like, it was so stressful knowing that I couldn't use Crustle to its best ability because I didn't have a Rapid Spinner and things like that. You know, it's just really tough. Not that I didn't like using Togetic. Togetic was actually a really big part of my team. It's tough to justify bringing that thing every single week. It was so bad. In terms of I also want to make sure that next season I have 2 things that I didn't have this season other than a Rapid Spinner / good Defogger. A more viable electric type, because that was really tough working with only Raichu as my only access to Volt Switch. That was painful. And also something that can how do I say this? Something that can sop up a knockoff that isn't my Mega, basically. Because that was another thing that I had struggles with. The only thing on my team that didn't mind taking a knockoff most of the time, other than Lop, was Crocodile. And that's a problem. So that's another thing I want to work on. Definitely want a good Volt Switch option next season, as well as something that could take knockoffs that isn't my Mega Evolution. But I don't even know what my Mega Evolution will be next season, but whatever it is, I want it to be something I don't have to rely on to take a knockoff, because I want to have another option in that regard, whether it's a good fairy type or, a fairy type that doesn't need an Inviolite, or what else even resists dark? I don't know. Just something. Also, the other thing that my team kind of lacked to a degree, other than Weezing and Togetic, was immunity or at least resistance to ground type moves. Also, just a grass type in general would have been really nice, especially in my playoff match against Aki, because it would have been really nice to switch into that freaking Tangrowth and not get put to sleep. That would have been great. Things like that. Small things, really. My team was, considering what I had to work with, my team was a really good team, I felt like. I drafted really well. It's just there were some weaknesses that were a little bit too glaring that my team didn't address well enough. And they showed it, especially in my playoff matchup against Aki. Tangrowth just completely trashed my team, and there was nothing I could do about it. So things like that. Overall, I was really proud of the season, though. I'm really looking forward to Season 3. After Season 1, I kind of felt like, oh man, I'm a terrible battler. Maybe I should stop. But I kind of just worked toward it, and it was something that I wanted, was to get good at competitive battling, and I feel like I've achieved that, and I can only grow from here, and I'm really looking forward to that in the future. Overall, I just really think that it's something that I could just continue to improve upon, and maybe even one day I'll be able to consider myself and think of myself as a solidly good battler who I feel like I could, if I ever reach a point where I feel like I could go up against any one person at any one time and beat them, that would be a great feeling. I know I haven't reached that yet, and maybe I never will, but it's it's just something to feel good about, to feel like, yeah, I match up really well against this person regardless of their skill level, because I could consider myself a really good battler in my own right. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to season 3. The NPL is easily my favorite thing I do on YouTube. Obviously I don't do much anymore. I try to bring things into this channel and they just kind of die and wither because my channel is full of death and withering. But I really look forward to the NPL every time the draft rolls around. I don't know when we're looking for season 3. We're gonna wait until probably until meta develops, but definitely looking forward to it. I'm probably gonna keep the Marowaks this time around because the logo has really grown on me. But yeah, that's really all I have for you guys today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this season because I loved it. I had so much fun with this season. It was great. And I hope you guys are looking forward to season 3 because I know for sure as hell I am. I've grown a lot as a battler over the 8 or so months that I've been battling competitively. I guess it's been like 10 months now, but whatever. I've grown a lot and I know that. But I'm really looking forward to continuing on growing and continuing to learn things as a battler. And I hope Sun and Moon brings a new element to the game because it has gotten a little bit stale, but it's still something I enjoy doing week in and week out in the draft format. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and comment and subscribe and all that good jazz. And remember to share, because sharing is caring, and follow me on Twitter because I always stumble over that word, like because I do updates and stuff, and you'll know when videos are coming out to go in contact with me, and sometimes I'm kind of funny. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Peace out.